Okay, let's get started. Big welcome to our expert panel today. This is the panel for the Interactive Minds Club, and it's been put together to give marketers an opportunity to ask peers for input and advice on particular topics of interest. So here with me today and on the panel, I've got two experienced marketers. I'd like to start off with an introduction. Sam Olstein is currently the Executive Director of Brand Marketing at GE. He's based in New York, where he leads creative, digital and media work with the goal of protecting and promoting GE's brand. Sam also manages the company's stack of digital learning tools for the workforce internally, which is called Brilliant You. His work bridges a range of industries from digital to technology and engineering, implementing tools such as drones, consumer products, live experiences, and volcanoes to redefine the narrative of GE's century-long legacy. Welcome, Sam.
Thanks, Louisa. Well, hello.
And I'd also like to welcome Nathan Bush. He's the founder and lead consultant at 12 High, an agency that activates digital and e-commerce strategies to accelerate business growth. He's located in Brisbane as well. He's a strategic leader who leads teams, defines strategies and delivers solutions across digital, marketing, e-commerce and IT. Prior to 12 High, Nathan was the group digital manager at Super Retail Group, where he led digital strategy, operations and innovation across many of their brands for over 6 years. He also developed their test and learn capacity, significantly growing e-commerce revenue and transforming the culture by establishing new ways of working. Welcome, Nathan.
Hey, Louisa. Hey, Sam.
For those of you who don't know who I am, my name's Louisa Dahl. I'm the CEO and founder of Interactive Minds. I've been a marketer for over 19 years, and since starting Interactive Minds, I've run over 120 events to help marketers to stay up to date with the changes in the digital industry. I've written a book called The Deliberate Digital Marketer, and I'm passionate about helping marketers to collaborate, learn, and to step up and stand out. So thanks to all those attending today and also those who are watching the recording. A big thank you to those who did submit questions for the panel today. Remember, any members of the Interactive Minds Club can continue to contribute to future panel sessions in advance by pre-submitting your questions. So today we've got a bunch of questions that we're going to go through and have a bit of a chat around and get everyone's perspective on. To start that off, one of the questions we hear quite frequently and that I think you're both very well placed to answer is, how do you stay ahead of the curve with marketing trends and technology? And what does that literally mean in terms of your day-to-day and what you do? Who'd like to start? Sam, how about you kick us off?
Great. Love to. So great question. And a really tough one, because I feel like it changes so fast. And it honestly it's just impossible to stay ahead and on top of everything. I don't try to keep my thumb tapped on every single thing that's possible. I think it's part of the reason why we work with such great partners and have amazing teams that help us stay a step ahead. The way I like to think about it is, there's so much innovation, there's so much disruption that's happening around the ecosystem. And you can't go wrong with anything that you try, anything that you attempt. And so for me, it's less about trying to stay ahead of everything. And it's more about, being selective and picking the right things and just trying stuff, because there is no single right answer. And there's no single wrong answer. In fact, there's probably many right answers. So for me, I really just try to take as much in as I can. I definitely, scour Twitter. I'm constantly looking at the rankings of different apps on the app charts. I'm looking at industry coverage. And so it's less of, needing to know every single trend or what's coming up next, and more about just, trying stuff. And continually and consistently trying things. Because again, there's no one way to do this stuff. And it's really, as long as you try something, you'll know quickly if it resonates.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm with Sam there as well. It's like, I think sometimes there's a bit of a trap in the more you read, the less connected you are with what you should be doing, because everyone's writing about the stuff that's so far ahead or merely theories at the moment that it's actually not practical. And I think two of the best ways that I've found is actually getting in and doing it. And if you're a manager within teams, is actually diving into the detail with your team, rather than staying at that helicopter view. Diving into that detail really helps you find those little 1%ers And they may not feel like innovations, but they are the things that set you apart from others. The other thing that I do is I have 4 or 5 really close friends in the industry, and we always catch up once a month, coffee, beer, whatever it is. And it's a really open conversation, sharing what we're finding together. And we trust each other, so it can be very open. And I find that's a great way to discover new things that others are doing as well.
Yeah, great. I had an interesting chat earlier this week with a guy in Melbourne called Alex Holmes, a marketer. And one of the things he was saying in terms of this type of topic was that he's really leading the way in terms of what he wants to find out about as well, which I think is a really interesting approach, because I think a lot of people I speak to use things like Google Alerts, for example, to stay up to date with, things that are happening in specific areas. But what Alex did that was different is he kind of said, okay, for the next couple of months, I'm going to focus on this one area, and I'm going to consume everything I can about that one topic and become a really, an expert in it, and then put that to practice. And I thought that was a really interesting way to go about it, and probably something that I subconsciously do through what I'm reading and the podcasts I'm listening to and how I go about it. But I hadn't really thought of it as perhaps being quite as deliberate intention as that. So I thought that was a really nice way as well to get specific.
It's nice because it's so easy as marketers just to skim over topics.
Yeah.
And try and keep up with everything. Like Sam said, you can't keep up with everything. So diving deep into one area and knowing that back to front, and then probably revisiting it occasionally is a really interesting approach.
Well, that's right. And I guess once you've got that deepness, then you can kind of stay up with the updates, and they make a lot more sense as well. And you have an opinion about whether that's likely to happen or work.
And I really believe too, with Nathan's point of, knowing the details, and the absolute best way to learn is by doing. You're going to understand when you're in the trenches and you're actually executing, and you're understanding, is this all it's cracked up to be? Does this actually deliver on, the promise that I thought this trend was about, or this really cool startup was? And you absolutely are going to grow and gain the most for yourself and for your client, your brand, whoever you're representing, by actually getting your hands dirty and doing the work.
Yeah, definitely. Who do you follow from a thought leader perspective for updates and information? Anyone come to mind?
Yeah, actually, there's somebody, a guy by the name of Ryan Hoover, who started a company called Product Hunt, which has since been acquired by AngelList. Ryan and his company, I think, their sole focus is digital products. So if you're a junkie for all things new and hip and interesting in the world of digital products, whether they're apps, whether they're new uses of cryptocurrency, whether there are new ways that automotive companies are rolling out features, it's just a wealth of great information. And Ryan has a really, really fascinating perspective on how each of these new, very specific products fit into larger macro trends, and just really stitching together a bigger picture from the vantage point that he sits at.
Great. What about you, Nathan?
I'm a bit all over the shop. I use Twitter a lot, same as Sam, but podcasts as well. Podcasts are huge for me at the moment because I'm on the go a lot. One that I've recently latched onto is Marketing School with Neil Patel and Eric Booth. It's awesome because as a strategic consultant, you're often not in the detail and you don't always get to see all the way through. And they talk to a level of detail and execution that's fantastic. And they're kind of like 5-minute episodes every day.
Yeah, exactly. So easy to consume.
I like that one. Yeah,
definitely. I was thinking about this as well in terms of who I follow, and I think there's the big guys like the Seth Godins in the world. I'm enjoying his book at the moment and always listen to his Akimbo podcast. But in terms of who else gets to that practical level, probably one for me is Noah Kagan. We actually brought him out to Australia several years ago, but his business around AppSumo and Sumo, they get really practical in terms of what they're doing and trying, and they share that as well. So I quite like that. I think particularly in the early days, he did a lot of that personally, and now that's, happening within their team as well. Also, I'm enjoying Social Media Examiner. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They run a big conference, Social Media Marketing World, which is coming up next month in San Diego, which I'm very excited to be going to. And they've created a video series around how they're putting together that event, but more from a marketing perspective. So it's quite interesting. They've got 2 series with about 4 or more episodes in each, I think. And yeah, you get some good little insights, and they share, you know, what their CPA is and stuff like that as they go, and some of the problems they're trying to solve. So yeah, I like kind of getting to that level of things as well.
Isn't it funny too on the podcast? Oh, sorry, Sam.
No, go ahead, Nathan.
On the podcast, it's funny how it's starting to become so popular that you can find your niche. Like,
yes.
I found this guy at the moment who does this podcast from the sunny coast, and he basically interviews small to medium sized business owners from a marketing and e-commerce point of view. So he's got everyone from the local fishing shop owner through to the founders of Stone and Wood on there, and he's sponsored by Amex, so it's a big production, but it's all from the Sunshine Coast. And it's fantastic because you actually get these business owners in who speak about the business, not necessarily from a marketing point of view, but because they founded the business, they found themselves in marketing to start with to get it kicked off. And it's really funny to hear about marketing from a business perspective rather than a marketer's perspective.
Definitely. Yeah, there's so many niche, awesome podcasts now. I love Masters of Scale. That's a really good one. I'm really enjoying some as well that aren't necessarily new, but have been around a couple of years, but I'm only just finding them. And, you know, although digital is always changing, some of the basic stuff that we're doing isn't changing. There's one called Community Made by Jason Gaynor that I'm loving at the moment.
Louisa, where do you discover most of your podcasts?
Usually on other podcasts or from people mentioning them to me. So often it's like someone interviewed on a podcast mentions their favorite podcasts, and then I'll go delving into that world of that endless loop, really. Do you listen to many podcasts, Sam?
I dabbled, probably not as many as I should. I like to listen to audiobooks. Lately I've been doing I was asking about Discovery because I've been looking and hunting on Anchor, which I think is just a fascinating platform that Spotify recently acquired them, but they're just such a simple and easy way for anyone to make their own podcast with like one click. And so, talk about kind of niche topics and, niche things. There's so many fascinating things you can find, like a podcast of a guy, talking about rocks. It's just like, not that I'd recommend that one, but it's just fascinating what the world of audio and kind of the power that podcasting is given to a lot of people with great perspectives.
Yeah. Talking about this kind of concept of continual learning, how would you recommend that marketers can encourage their team to embrace continual learning? And how do you see that working? I mean, things like podcasts are often done in your own time. And I think, it depends on the individual as to whether that's something they're willing to commit to. Any suggestions, for that medium and other channels as well, as to how managers can encourage their team?
Well, I do think that it is really important for a manager to establish a culture of learning and development, a culture that fosters growth of the career of the people they're managing. And that starts, I think, with just, a dedication to learning continuously. And it's not just, solely event-based. It's not just about going to attend 1 or 2 things a year or having very defined time where you're going to go and immerse yourself and learn. So I do think it is critical to embrace it habitually. And, you find the right things that work for you. For some, it might be a podcast. For others, it could be reading books. It could be going to discussions. I find it really useful when anyone goes and has an experience or finds something that they bring it back to the team, and we have a discussion about how it applies to the work that we're doing. And so I just think, for managers to create and foster those environments that enable that kind of discourse and really, peer-to-peer learning, I think is great ways, to really reinforce and make it stick.
Definitely.
I reckon sorry, Louisa. I always had 2 rules. It was one, before we invest any time or resources into it, show us that you're passionate about the subject that you want to learn about. So I think there is an onus on the individual to show that they will take time out of their own day to investigate it, and also just show that you can have some sort of benefit from the business with that learning. So to Sam's point, will you bring it back to the team? Will you apply it to the project that you're working on, or how will you actually use that knowledge? And then we can invest in it.
Yeah, definitely. Sam, with your tool that you've created, Brilliant You, can you tell us how that works? And does this overlap into that area?
Yeah, it does. So Brilliant You is kind of like a content aggregator. We have an archive of over 40,000 different assets from a range of providers.
Awesome.
Some come from internally at GE, from our own employees. Some come from companies like TED or Harvard. You can actually register for online courses at a lot of other leading institutions. There is a paywall for some of the content, but most of the stuff that is on Brilliant You is subsidized and free for GE employees to access on demand, on their own free time. And it is a really great value prop to our employees, and I think a great signal for how GE invests in people's careers. But yeah, it's a really great archive of stuff to comb through it and find, and it's all types of content. There are podcasts, there are book excerpts, so abstracts, videos, and then full courses. Something that we're going to really try to do more of is actually allow for more of our employees to create their own versions of mini courses and tutorials that they can demonstrate and show.
Awesome. And do you find it challenging to get employees to make the time to use that kind of resource, or how do you kind of manage and track that, or do you track it?
Yes, it is hard. It is challenging. It's challenging for two reasons. One is we have a physical campus that is completely dedicated to learning and development. It's kind of like GE University. It's called Crotonville, and it is an amazing space. So amazing that has become synonymous with what learning is. So what we were talking about earlier is that it can't just be an event-based thing. GE Crotonville kind of has become, it is this amazing privilege that you work your way to get into a Crotonville class, and you're able, your manager nominates you for something, and when you do go, you are given the permission to disconnect from your day job and completely immerse yourself and focus in your own career. And that is incredible and amazing. But it's also created, I think, a little bit too much of a culture of that's the only place that learning can happen. So that's one of the challenges that we have to overcome with this, virtual kind of everyday habitual learning, is it's not just there. And then I think it's, it's also just people's time and attention. It's just like marketing, right? We're fighting for their attention, and we run email campaigns every week on different new courses, different types of content that we're including. Always trying to push out ways to bring people into the platform. But yeah, it is challenging, because even though it's there and people know that it's there, they don't always make the time to do it.
Yeah, definitely. Look, this probably is a nice segue into the next area we wanted to discuss today. And some of the questions we had were around team and some of the challenges in, I suppose, growing your team, getting the best people involved, and the process, I suppose, in terms of what you cover when you're doing that. So let's spend a couple of minutes talking about teams, but more from a, hiring them perspective. What's the biggest challenge for you guys when engaging, the best people to join your team?
Nathan, do you want to
go? It's quite easy at the moment because I don't have a team.
You have had though, Nathan. We know that.
But I think the biggest challenge was matching culture. In the past was matching culture, because a job can look great on paper. And I think more and more people are stepping into places, whether it's job interviews or the other, or just a phone call, and going, does this match the kind of people that I want to work with in the environment that I want to work with? I think the job description is often coming second to that now.
Yeah, definitely.
I look for two things: curiosity and range. And those two things actually do go together to some degree. But I genuinely believe that a curious person will continue to challenge themselves.
Yeah.
And I think more and more being I don't know if you want to call it a generalist or not necessarily a jack of all trades, but knowing just enough to be dangerous in a couple of different spaces is incredibly useful in the business environment we're in today. There is so much change happening all around us, and the job descriptions and roles that were built and developed last year might change this year, might change next year. And the more range that you have as an employee to try new things and learn new skills and be a resource to a number of different stakeholders in your organization, the better.
Yeah, definitely. One of the problems I always have with finding a new team member is potentially leaving it too late. So we kind of wait to where, and I suppose as a small business, we don't necessarily plan for additional team members, 6 months in advance. We kind of get out to maybe 3 weeks out when we need them and we go, we really need some help. Do you have a similar problem, or have you had any kind of ways to solve that other than, I suppose trying to get that planning in advance?
I suppose for me in previous roles, almost had the opposite. Is that we planned a long way out, but we had trouble securing anyone. So we had roles that went on for 6 months, 8 months trying to find people. Because one, they were very specific, and two, the location wasn't great. And it was very hard to find people who could do the job and wanted to do the job. Where it was, we had the opposite problem. That went on forever.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, what about you, Sam?
Yeah, it's funny. Maybe also an inverse to that. I feel like there is so much pressure to fill an open role that's a necessity. And at times you have to, speed becomes, a bigger criteria than, the right choice, the thoughtful choice. And so that worries me about some of those trade-offs.
Yeah. What's the market like in the US at the moment in terms of jobs? Are you finding it easy to find people, or does it take, longer than you'd like?
It depends for what kind of role. I think generally there are so many talented people who are looking for great opportunities. I think they want to work for companies that, stack up to something higher, of a higher order. Purpose and kind of responsibility is really, really critical. The one exception would be if you're looking for anyone in data science. I think those are really, really hard roles to find.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I feel like there is a really great, plethora of creative people, at least in New York, who can help any business.
Yeah, great. I noticed when I was hiring recently that we put up a part-time job, and the number of applications we got for that far exceeded what we would get for a full-time job. So I guess I'm noticing a bit of a trend, not just for, women or mothers even, but, lots of people are, doing multiple smaller jobs or wanting to, manage their time differently. So that was something really interesting. We quite surprised with the quality of the applications as well were really high, probably higher than we'd anticipated the role being initially.
And how does that work for you as a business owner? Does that work for you having multiple people doing different time zones and
Well, most of us are in a similar time zone, so that's not a problem. Yeah. I think for us, we did want a part-time person. It wasn't a full-time role. Maybe they might disagree. But no, I think, it was nice to have a breadth. Probably, if anything, it actually pushed us up in terms of the quality of person that we went with, because we had so much choice. And they're sitting beside me now laughing at me, but, so yeah, I think that was probably a good thing overall for the business, but it also meant that, it made it hard to potentially get someone with slightly less experience because we had so much experience in front of us that it was, hard to turn away from.
I think some of the best people on my team today started out in part-time roles.
And then went full-time?
And then went
full-time. Or they're
full-time.
still in full-time, part-time. Yeah, right. Okay.
Yeah. Part-time to full-time. Or kind of short-term consultants or freelance. But yeah, not entirely full-time, but, trial run on both sides. And just very, very impressive. And I mean, one girl in particular, and she's a rock star.
Yeah. We all know about that, don't we, Nathan?
We do.
Yep.
The other thing that I've seen work really well is especially in larger organizations, is finding people in other parts of the business who want to get into marketing, because I'm a firm believer that you probably don't need to go to university to learn marketing. There's a lot there that you can learn yourself by doing and just getting involved and rolling your sleeves up, reading, being curious. And when you bring those people in from other parts of the business, if I'm talking from a retail perspective, whether it's from fulfillment or customer service, they bring a whole new sphere of knowledge into your team about the business that a lot of the team may not be thinking about. Because I think the best marketers can have a holistic view of the business. So if I increase sales here, what does that do for everyone else? What does that mean for the people who order products that have to speak to the customers on the shop floor, have to answer the phones, that have to do the finance reconciliations? So if you can bring that knowledge in from other parts of your business into your marketing team and then teach them the marketing, you can really get a really strong marketing team.
Yeah, nice. One of the questions we got, I'm interested in your opinion on, it was, if you were to invest in one new team member in the next 12 months to future-proof your team, who or what skill would you hire?
So I briefly touched on this a little bit earlier, but it would be in the kind of data scientist, data analysis, you could call it a data synthesizer. We've got, streams of data that we're drinking from a fire hose of all different inputs, from social media to Google Trends, to, different media metrics and engagement, to, more qualitative metrics on sentiment and polling or what have you. And none of them are connected at all.
Yeah.
And someone who can actually understand, make sense of it and try to, connect a story or extract a story from what that data says, I think is such a valuable skill. And it's not just, all spots and dots. There is absolutely a major creative element to it.
Yeah.
Because again, this stuff is not connected, and part of it is spotting some things that might be obvious to others, but then being able to thread the needle of how, you could tell the story from this activity happening on the right side to how it might affect the left side. That is an area that we definitely could not be investing more in.
I feel like data science is kind of like the new coding. It's something that soon everyone will be doing data science on the side, really, to get their skills up in that space. And I guess that's where we all need to get to, probably as marketers, is be able to interpret more of that data and be able to use it more.
And Sam, do you see that person coming in, having the data capabilities, but also the storytelling capabilities? Do you see that as one person, or do you think a better approach is to have the data person and partner them with someone who can weave that into a story?
That's a great question. We've tried more on the agency level to pair, the team that runs our data management platform with, some of our creative partners to try to piece those things together. So we've tried it more at a team level, not at the kind of individual person-to-person level, which is actually super interesting. And I think that it is absolutely a skill that a data-driven person could understand and adapt and learn just as much as a creative person who just takes the time, because, both of these things, I think you can build these muscles if you invest the time and effort and thought. Because again, there is no right way to do this. And it's just important that you are using all of these signals to help inform your decision making. So Nathan, that is an excellent question.
Do you think data science? Oh, sorry, you go, Nathan.
Sorry, I was just going to say it's interesting because the traditional agency creative model has always been to pair a copywriter and a graphic design person. I'm wondering whether we're heading into an era where we're pairing data and creative.
Yeah, that's a great parallel.
I wonder with data science whether, because obviously not every company can invest in a full-time data scientist, but at the same time may benefit from, insights periodically by stopping and looking at the data and making some decisions around it. And I guess at the moment that's really through third parties and agencies that you can access that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
It is. And it's, I think as marketers, we're overwhelmed by so many solutions out there, whether it is new agencies or it's specific tools, or it's from the platforms themselves. But it is, the amount of data is not an issue at all. Right? It is not a problem.
Content now, really, isn't it?
Yeah. It's just, it's making sense of it. And it's so easy to get so overwhelmed so fast. And most senior leaders at companies, it is so over their heads.
Because there's the other side to it, isn't there? There's the understanding the data and making use of it and getting insights from it. There's also what you said, Sam, that there's so many solutions out there and people come to you all the time and go, hey, we've got this great AI tool, we've got this, we've got this, we've got this. But plugging them in actually takes so much time and effort to even investigate how you would do it. If you had someone who knew that it's not an IT role anymore, but knows how to integrate it into the marketing, so you can at least trial things pretty easily. There's another skill set there that I think is hugely valuable for the team.
Yeah, a bit more techie, I guess, in terms of plugging it all together. But it all really comes back to the systems we're using now and how open they are, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Systems on top of systems on top of systems. I mean, that is what's happening in the world of voice, right? Yeah. You want to order a Starbucks from your car. It knows the location. It's another system around location to another system tied to your wallet to another system tied to the back end ordering. It's just you have to thread the needle between these things, and that is very, very challenging.
Just to deviate from my question line a little bit here, but with voice it's definitely something we're talking a lot about now here, but I imagine in the US it's perhaps at a different level to the uptake and functionality that we've got available. How are you using voice, and are you using it on a day-to-day basis?
So it is, it's interesting.
Speaking normally, of course, but to actually talk to machines.
Yeah, we've done a handful of experiments with, I would say, mild success. Maybe that's even being generous. I think it's hard. It's hard for a company like GE because we're not necessarily something you can purchase. We're not necessarily something that will give you recommendations of what to do, right? I think, today, most of us are engaging with a lot of these voice-based assistants to help us find or transact in some manner. That is, I think, right now the best utility. So we're still trying to figure out what role does a GE play in that world. And I do think there's a role. I do think there's massive opportunities outside of just consumer and certainly in B2B, in all business. One thing we are paying really close attention to is the amount of activity that is happening in search. Something like 30% of all searches now are happening via voice.
Must be, I think 50% by next year, I think is the...
something crazy. Yeah. And, and in the world of voice search, you need to own position zero, because Alexa or Cortana or Google Home is not going to, run you a list, the entire first page of search results. Nor are you able to pay to, be the first promoted result.
Yes.
So you have to own position zero through really good SEO, through really good content, and through the right domain authority. And that could be with your own channels. It could be with some partner channels. But so we are paying really close attention about how can we make sure that when there are questions that are being posed to Google, that we are, in that first position and the answer.
Yeah, we just ran an event on search and voice in Sydney this week, actually. And, after being at that, I think that SEO has probably, dropped back off people's focus a bit in the last few years. And it's about to come back in a big way in terms of, well, there's only one spot. Unless you're going really long tail, which I guess is the only option people are going to have. It's going to be interesting to see.
It will be very, very interesting. And even, what we were talking about earlier on just podcast discovery, right? Like that is going to play a big role in this whole thing.
Yeah. And I guess those algorithms are going to be quite interesting.
Yeah. I'm going to go on record, even I know you're recording this, and say I think it's overblown. I think it's way overblown. And I wasn't at your event, Louisa, but I think, and I've gone into a few of those studies where they have the percentage of voice searches, and you've got to be very, very careful about some of those stats around what they're considering as voice searches and where they're coming from and the rest. And I think as a brand, you've got to understand the human behavior behind it and understand what people are searching for. So if you're a brand that's weather reliant, absolutely voice is going to be there. But if you're a brand where people go, I want to know the price of hotels in Paris, people are unlikely to do that. And I think that will continue until they get really smart. But even then, I think we're seeing that trough of disillusionment around voice search at the moment. We got the hype, and people were thinking that voice was going to be the center of the universe, especially around the home. But we saw Google Home Hub come out, and people are now going, actually, voice is it has a purpose, but it's very domineering. It's kind of like you can't do a quiet search, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's the word I was searching for. Thank you. So I think there's a time and place, but I still think there's that natural human behavior of people not wanting to broadcast most of the time.
Yep. It's, I agree. I think it's definitely going to be suited to some types of businesses and tasks more than others. But I think there's always going to be a play in this space. I think there's going to be companies that won't want to be second, even if they're never being used, It was interesting. Well, I mean, there's a lot of companies that do that for a whole bunch of stuff though, right? That, might not be useful, but it's still going to get a bit of attention. I think at the moment, from my understanding, and look, it's fairly top level, but I don't think there's great reporting on voice search yet. And I think from what I understand, Google Analytics, for example, doesn't distinguish between voice searches and other. So it was interesting. One of the speakers was sharing that the way they're telling or trying to, understand that data around their searches is if people are using the word please, it's often a voice search. So you tend to talk nicely to your devices better than you interact with your screens. That was an interesting insight.
That's fascinating. Look, it is, Nathan, I think your skepticism is totally warranted. I mean, it's fascinating because all four of the big tech companies have a play here. Right. So clearly there is some belief that whether it's ahead of its time or it takes the appropriate advancements in artificial intelligence and spatial computing to really allow for the right application, the right opportunity in the market. It is a future that I think is coming, and I don't know how far away it is. It's necessarily around the corner. And there are some good uses. I mean, look, do have an Amazon Alexa, and the only thing I use it for is an alarm clock, and it's a great alarm clock. But right now, that's it. And it's also interesting that because I heard this the other day that Jeff Bezos really wants Alexa to have a personality. And because of that, they've created this opinions team at Amazon. And so there are certain things, like if you asked Alexa before the Super Bowl, like, Alexa, who's going to win the Super Bowl? She give you her opinion. And, even if you ask Alexa, what's your favorite pizza? She'll give you her opinion on her favorite pizza. Now, what does that mean for all the other pizza companies, right, who are trying to build their infrastructure to make sure that they're the ones that are that answer? So it is really fascinating, because you would think, back to what we're talking about with search, you would think that kind of organic search results would be what pops up. But if Amazon Alexa becomes this best friend or this persona, and has opinions, where do you draw the line, and how does, it's very dicey.
I wonder if those opinions are the way to monetize voice search, though. I mean, I don't know, do you pay for Alexa's opinion on your pizza?
Possibly, but then would you trust her opinions?
Would you trust a robot? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to change tack now. I think we could probably talk about voice a lot more, but let's keep going. We had a question come in, and this was specifically from someone who works at a company that makes commercial playground and fitness equipment for the likes of councils and property developers and schools. And their question said that they're an industry leader when it comes to the product quality and the brand prestige. But what are some ways for them, or some mediums that they can use to communicate this clearly to their target audience? Because whilst their product quality is superior, it also comes with a higher price. And often that's a motivating factor for their customers. And they're wanting some ideas and feedback on how they can, I suppose, demonstrate that prestige and brand quality. Nathan, do you want to share any ideas?
Sure. So a couple of things that spring straight to mind is understanding what the unique selling propositions are, what makes yours so quality, and you don't have to go into a huge amount of detail. And usually there's 3 or 4 things that set you apart, and being able to communicate them really clearly and succinctly is one. Obviously, if you're quality, you've got happy customers, so bringing them to the forefront. How do you promote reviews and the rest? And the proof's in the pudding. So if you're really the supplier of choice for councils, then mum and dad should be very happy with it, right? So just looking for all those little proof points along the way that you can get that message home will be key to start with.
Great, thank you. Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I think if brand prestige and premium nature are kind of core of what they're all about, then I think that needs to come to life in every single touch point. Not just the product itself, but in all of their communication tactics, every single channel, every element of their website, the way they interact with customers. If you show up and articulate your brand and exude that premium nature, I think then the expectation of their customers and the anticipation from their customers will follow suit.
Nice. Let's talk about some ways they can practically do that. Can we delve into that a little bit more? I think the customer, testimonials is obviously an obvious one. I think there's an opportunity around, telling customer stories as well. So I think by sharing your customers' stories, maybe it's a video, maybe it's an interview, maybe, it could be written text as well, but then you're in effect sharing that customer journey and why they chose your product as well, and what they're getting out of having it. Whether it be, it might be lasting a long time. It might be able to cope with like high volume of kids using it, whatever it might be. Those things are going to come through perhaps in that as an idea. Are there any other ideas around how they can kind of practically implement those suggestions?
I think if it is true and the business really does believe that it's the best quality product on the market, what are you going to put behind it to show that? So is there a statement and a product proposition that you can put out there that really makes it stand out to market? So guaranteed that this will last as long as your kids are at your home. So, you know, while your kids are in your home, this thing will work and it won't break. And I'm pretty sure there's no one else doing that kind of guarantee. So I think sometimes marketing get tasked to solve problems that are actually business problems. And I think sometimes if you look at it as a whole business proposition and you go, how are we going to solve this as a business? Great. Can we extend our warranty from the standard 3 years to 15 years? Are we prepared to do that? That will make it stand out straight away.
Nice.
That's one off the top of my head.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's some kind of like mommy influencers that, you know, might make sense to partner with. I guess it, you know, kind of is in a similar vein as testimonials, but some, you know, really high profile, high impact moms who would actually, you know, I think be the core, you know, purchaser of this product. I'd imagine that they might be able to find some like real revenue ROI, especially if they are enabling some of those influencers with the tools to sell the product.
Excellent. Okay.
You know
great.
what might be cool as well is to partner with real estate agents, and if they sell homes, brand new homes to young families, to give them a discount or an incentive to sell, swing set, whatever it is as well.
So looking at partnerships.
People are looking to set up their homes, and they often have access to cash at that point. Could be revenue.
Could even be good for like display houses, put them in the backyards and show people face to face.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it. Okay. Last topic I want to cover off today is around advertising, but specifically there was a question that came in around what's the difference between AI advertising, AI-driven advertising, and programmatic advertising, and then thoughts on kind of performance of each of those different types. Who'd like to kick us off?
I'll start. This is a great topic. So I think programmatic has come a long way. I think it has gotten a really bad rap over the years. I think that not all parts of programmatic are necessarily good, nor are they necessarily bad. I think that, you know, being data-driven in your targeting is a great thing. Collecting as much first-party data on your core audiences is a great thing. Enriching that data with, you know, more information through other third-party data sources is also a great thing. You know, the more a business can learn about their customers or their target audience, the better. It just gets down to how they actually deploy that and how they leverage it. Most programmatic advertisers, I think, unfortunately, do the low-hanging, easy fruit, which is we're going to go and find those people using, you know, banner ads, and we're going to go buy, you know, the worst inventory on the internet to try to reach those people. And they also
like a skeptic there, Sam.
Yeah. and they also fill those banners with really bad creative. But so I think, you know, the first part of collecting and enriching and understanding all of that data is awesome. And I think that then targeting very specifically the people that you need to reach is also really, really good. I just don't think it should be at any kind of creative expense. And most programmatic is done in that manner because it is thought of as entirely data-driven and only data-driven, and something that you can just kind of set and forget.
What do you feel happens when that quality isn't there? Is that directly related to results then? I think it needs all those pieces to get the sleep.
Well, I think it's diminishing results, because I think there are, I don't know what the industry average on click-through rates for banner ads right now, but it's very low, right? And so there's always going to be some benchmarking of, well, you know, it beat the industry average or it's slightly below the industry average. And I think and again, I don't know this offhand, but I'd imagine that that continues to go down year in and year out. And so I think that there is some performance because it is delivering some kind of return, but I think that return, it just will continue to drop. And yeah, and again, I think many brands just, they almost take creative out of it. They only think about who is my audience, how am I reaching them, the frequency with which I'm reaching them, and the places that they're being reached. And yeah, there might be some return, but it is not much. And, if you just filled that inventory or thought of other ways to reach those people still using the same data and just injected some creativity into it, I think the results would be tenfold. So I do think there are...
Oh, sorry.
No, please go ahead.
Do you see there being a difference between kind of artificial intelligence driven advertising and programmatic?
I do. So I think artificial intelligence is so early in its use for advertising. At least some of the things that I've seen. There have been a handful of experiments in like chatbots and different ways that AI has been used to build creative, and other ways that AI is being used to understand and segment content and audiences. And I think that there, again, are probably some really great and new innovations that you could find ways to plug in, but you can't solely rely on it as the end all be all. You have to make sure you're surrounding it with the appropriate, with all of the supporting and complementary resources. I just think artificial intelligence is such a buzzword, and there are absolutely cool things that are being done with those tools today. I don't know that it is at the stage yet, same with programmatic, where it is a replacement to creativity.
What are your thoughts, Nathan?
I don't have many. I learned a lot from Sam then. It's one of those areas that I've kind of skimmed along the surface and never actually got into the detail of the doing on. So from my understanding, though, programmatic was more that the humans are setting the rules and optimizing the rules as we go, whereas the AI dream is more about the machines learning what rules to implement. Would that be fair, Sam?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think,
very high level.
Yeah. I think, I guess it's all in the scope of what the AI is doing. And if the AI uses, deep learning, machine learning, to not make the same mistakes it did before, in which case it probably would be really driving more or pushing more human influence outside and just relying on algorithms and computers to rectify any mistakes that it makes. But it's just the world of AI is it's just so early. And I do think that there are some interesting experiments that a lot of different journalism outlets are doing with AI. So like Quartz recently started a AI news studio. I think the Knight Foundation just awarded a big grant to, it might have been BuzzFeed or someone else, to use AI, and the way that they're trying to do it are tools that enhance and enable reporters and help them in their investigation and help them turn around stories much quicker. So, and I think with your example, Nathan, it's, AI, and the examples I've seen when it's worked well, it is actually enabling and arming more human activity as opposed to replacing it.
Yeah,
nice.
Gotcha. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah, great. While we're talking about advertising, let's briefly talk about Facebook. Obviously, organic reach in Facebook is almost non-existent these days. Do you think that it's a waste of time for companies to still be using organic reach through Facebook, or do you think the only way to play is to pay?
I don't think it's a waste. I think if you're going to do it, you should just be thoughtful about it. I do think it's harder and harder to reach your audience that follows you. That's for sure. But, you know, community is not going away. Community is important, whether it's on Facebook, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's on Reddit, whether it's on TikTok, whatever. Community is a vital part of, I think, a healthy brand and healthy feedback. And you just be thoughtful about what you're putting out, and don't just put things out to put things out so you meet your frequency goal every week.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that community is so important. And on Facebook, you can see that they're promoting so much around group activity. So anything around groups. So I've seen some smart brands take advantage of this. So people like Spell and the Gypsy, which is a fashion design brand based out of Byron Bay. They're all about ethically sustained clothing and about clothing that lasts forever. And so they started using groups, Facebook groups, to bring their customers together to do swap and sells, buy, swap, sell groups, because they actually, kind of similar to the Patagonia model, they want their product to last forever and not go into landfill. So they're helping these groups survive and thrive by promoting them, which I think is really interesting.
Cool. Yeah, that's interesting. I think, you know, from my perspective, I think it's something we still all need to be doing, but I think it is about thinking about how much time you're spending versus the effort and output you're getting from it. I think that needs to always be, you know, kept top of mind in terms of what is your actual reach. It's great to spend heaps of time on content or graphics or whatever it might be that you're putting in your Facebook page or group. But if you're not getting the reach on it, then, you know, how do you make that equation work? And what is the right equation there in terms of time to output that you're getting?
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's really, really hard, because it does feel like, you know, a little bit of like a bait and switch, right? Because for so long it was, you know, grow your followers and here are tools to grow your fans, and now you got to pay to reach them. But yeah, you know, community, like we've been talking about, I think is always going to be an important ingredient.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, that brings us to a close today. Thank you so much for being involved. It was really fun to have a chat and to cover off some of these big topics. Really appreciate you being here, and look forward to doing it again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks,
that was fun.
Louisa.
Yeah, thanks so much, Louisa. Great to meet you, Nathan.
You too, Sam. See ya.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.